Welcome to the Girl Out of Order podcast. Here we are on episode 52 in our second month of tackling the concept, the topic, the issue of worthiness. And today I am so fired up to tackle this topic because if you've been with Girl Out of Order for any amount of time, you know that this is a Come Along With Me podcast. And we are a come along with me community. What does that mean? Well, sisters, I'm going to be talking about bringing experts in on scheduling interviews with people who are talking about things that I am working on, topics that are meaningful to me. Because here's the deal. We as female human beings have so much in common that a lot of the times the topics that we address here at Girl Out of Order, we're all struggling with on some level, in some measure in our life. And today is no exception. So today we are tackling imposter syndrome. And we're not just going to tackle it, we're going to provide typical, we as in me, I am going to provide you tactical, practical tips, things that you can do immediately to start busting through this damaging mental focus and mindset. It keeps you playing small, doesn't it, sisters? Because I know it has done that to me. It has impacted my life, my business, my mission, my parenting, my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my friends. It impacts every aspect in the life of a woman. Before we dive in, though, I've got a little bit of housekeeping I want to do. First and foremost, I am so fired up because in the month of April, on April 22nd at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, Girl Out of Order is hosting its first ever live Zoom call, and it's going to be happening in the Girl Out of Order Facebook community. So if you have not joined our Facebook community, get in there, sisters. Come join us because on April 22nd, we're going to gather as a community and we're going to start connecting with one another. I have so many plans for this Zoom call, and it's not just going to be Christine talking. We are going to have times of sharing. We're going to have times of encouraging one another, and we're going to go into breakouts where we get to know each other better. So please, 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 if you haven't joined the Girl Out of Order Facebook community, come on in. Our group is growing every single day, and this live Zoom call is going to be the first ever opportunity where you guys get to connect with one another and have real awesome conversations, authentic getting to know each other. And I'm really, really fired up. But you have to be in the community because that's the only place I'm going to be posting the Zoom link, and you must register for the Zoom call. You can't just ask for the link. You have to actually register so we can get an idea of how many of you amazing humans are going to be showing up on April 22nd. And secondly, I would just ask if you could help us get the message of Girl Out of Order out into the universe. We need your help to follow us on Instagram, friend us, follow us, whatever the terminology is, on Facebook. And if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel is growing and it's so exciting. So if you're listening to this in your AirPods or whatever, that's fantastic. But if you would like to see the recording of it, come on over to YouTube and hit subscribe and join our channel. It's sometimes, I don't know about you all, but I do so much better visually than I do auditorily. Everybody's different, but I would love it if you could come on over and hit subscribe. I do have some exciting announcements. We have so many amazing guests coming up in the next couple months. They're scheduling their recordings, and I've been interviewing these incredible women and talking to them and connecting. And so it is just amazing to watch an interview take place on YouTube. So that's all for my housekeeping. Now, if you are watching me on YouTube, you're probably wondering why I'm wearing an Iowa Hawkeye hat and jersey. And it's because I am recording this podcast on the day of the National Championship Women's Basketball Tournament. And Sadly, Iowa just lost for the second year in a row in the national championship. But I feel so much pride. And so I just want to pump up this Iowa basketball team because not only it wasn't just Caitlin Clark, but it was the way that she set the tone for women's sports. She has elevated not only the game of women's basketball, but she has elevated women's sports to a level that has never been seen in the history of American sports. And I'm so proud to be a Hawkeye alum. I am so proud to have been a Hawkeye athlete in the 90s. Yes, I'm 52, so it's been a hot minute. But I remember being a female athlete at the University of Iowa and having so much pride, but we did not get a lot of exposure. We did not get a lot of support. We definitely did not get a lot of financial support. And so it's just amazing to watch how the sport has changed. This Iowa basketball team has changed the face of women's sports. And I am so proud of our Iowa Hawkeyes. And while I'm at it, I want to give a huge shout out to the South Carolina Gamecocks because they played a phenomenal game of basketball today, and they are deserving national champions. And our team is so classy in the way they handled themselves. And I wanted to use this opportunity of this incredible game today to dive into imposter syndrome. Now, you might be wondering, like, what does one have to do with the other? Well, let me tell you. Because let me set the stage actually. It was 1988-89 school year. And I am doing everything possible to get a Division I scholarship to run track and cross country. And I came across the University of Iowa program, started talking to the coach, and eventually it led me to Iowa City. And I was thinking about this weekend, watching the game on Friday night and then today in the national championship. I was just reminiscing about what it was like to be a Division I athlete. And, I think we have such misconceptions when we see strong women, accomplished women doing incredible things. We sometimes think, wow, they must have it all together. They've got to have so much confidence to take the court, or in my instance, take the track and take it by storm and run with such confidence and just like intensity and determination. And all of that was true for me. As I was being recruited to run, I had all these accolades. I had these state championships. I had all the reasons on paper to feel like a badass. And I did in many respects. But the thing with imposter syndrome is it's a both and. What do I mean by that? Imposter syndrome plagues even the most successful women. I heard a statistic recently that over 75% of female executives struggle with imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud, a fake, like everyone's going to find out. And here I was in 1988 and 89 being recruited by some of the top schools in the country. It was bewildering. I was 17 years old. I was just a baby. And yet I was receiving all this praise, all this adoration from these coaches and these offers. And it was crazy. And you think I would have been feeling on top of the world. And in many respects, I was. And yet I felt so insecure on the inside. Because here's the thing about imposter syndrome. It's often completely invisible to the naked eye. What do I mean by that? What is imposter syndrome? And I find it interesting that the abbreviation for imposter syndrome is IS. And the thing that's so ironic about that is what is true about many of us, most of us, in fact, if not all of us, is that we are incredible. We are limitless in our potential. And oftentimes we've got a stack of proofs that show that we're amazing. And yet what is to us is a lie. It's the lie that we are fakes and frauds and imposter. So imposter syndrome, what is it? It is the belief that you are not competent or capable, or as competent or capable as others perceive you to be. And like I said, when you think about women who are doing great things, women that are succeeding, women that are doing things that you admire, you think, man, they've got it all together. It must be incredible to live in the mind and body and soul of such a confident woman. Sadly, imposter syndrome plagues even the most successful women. Despite evident success, despite obvious achievements and outward confidence, individuals with imposter syndrome, which is the vast majority of female human beings, because that's what we're talking about. I can't speak to men, haven't lived as one, not speaking to the male humans, even the male humans in this community, because I can't speak to what they go through, but I can speak to what women go through. We remain convinced, despite all outward appearances, that we are frauds and that we do not deserve the accolades that we receive. It's this shitty committee in our mind that says they're all going to find out. Oh my gosh, they're all going to find out that I am a big fat fake. So what does that have to do with Iowa? Well, I went to University of Iowa and I'd earned my scholarship. And I remember struggling so much, literally going to practice in tears because I still told myself I didn't belong there. And it was such a load of garbage, but it was debilitating. And so what happens is when we're struggling with imposter syndrome, we oftentimes sabotage ourselves. And eventually I had an amazing career there despite many injuries. And that's not even the point of the story. The point of the story is that I led a life where I was carrying the both, and I was having great success and believing deep down inside I wasn't worthy of it. And here I sit at 52 years old. I'm a successful attorney, successful podcaster. I love my life in many respects. And I still struggle with imposter syndrome. And so I'm here today, sisters, not just for you, but also because I'm speaking to myself. This is a mirror for what I need to learn as well. So I want to teach you and share with you the tools that help me fight this debilitating garbage, this syndrome. It's called syndrome for a reason, because when you think of a syndrome, you think of something that's endemic. It's inside you. It takes you down. It affects everything. It permeates every area of your life. And that's what imposter syndrome does. So let's talk about the effects of imposter syndrome, because if you're not sure you have it, I'm not saying you do. Not everybody does. But if you're not sure you have it or struggle with it, I bet you know somebody or somebody's or a community of somebody's who struggle with it. And so maybe you can take away some things today that can help you be more empathetic, be more tender-hearted, and be more supportive of your sisters who might be struggling with this exact syndrome. Number one, people with imposter syndrome suffer with self-doubt and stress. They go hand in hand. It's this constant fear of being exposed. I know that I have struggled with that. When I step into new opportunities, I am on edge when I am indulging in imposter syndrome, believing that they're all going to find out. It's just a matter of time. I'm going to be exposed. It can lead to chronic self-doubt and anxiety and this permeating stress. It affects mental health, physical health, and we know that stress can lead to a myriad of health challenges. Number two, perfectionism. When we see somebody who's a perfectionist, it's easy to kind of be like, oh, they're such a perfectionist, and sort of dismiss them as being obsessive or compulsive or whatever. But a lot of times what underlies this perfectionism is this feeling of being an imposter. We hold ourselves to impossibly high standards. Oh my gosh, we believe that we can't make any mistakes because if we do, holy crap, they're going to find out. they're going to find out this leads to over preparation, overworking, and burnout. Raise your hand, even if you're in the car, you're out running, raise your hand if you have felt so burned out from overworking, and ask yourself, am I doing these things? Am I in these patterns because I feel like an imposter? If so, you're not alone. I can tell you that in my legal career, I have put in embarrassingly long hours, and it has hurt my family life. It has kept me away from my kids. It has kept me from being present in my home because I'm always thinking, striving, because I'm so afraid that I'm just a fake, that I'm a fraud. Number 3, are you reluctant to speak up? Ooh, this one's a big one. Have you ever been in a meeting where there's men and women in the meeting? If you ever stop and just observe the meeting, watch how different people participate. That's the right word. Because a lot of times women who feel like they might be an imposter don't raise their hands. I've even seen this in UHPW. When I've been in these Power 5 breakouts, in these small groups, you can tell when women are shrinking back. Can't speak to whether or not they might be feeling that they're an imposter, but imposter syndrome is a lot of times why we don't share our ideas. We don't raise our hand. We don't speak up when we see something is freaking wrong. It kills our confidence and it hinders our professional development. Now, here's a big one. How many times have you stood by and watched a woman who's done something amazing have like an, oh, shucks, it really wasn't that big of a deal? I've watched my daughters do this. I've watched my daughters who have achieved great things diminish their own accomplishments. So they undervalue their achievements because they just don't feel like it's that big a deal because they're really not all that great. Maybe it was a one-off. Now here's the next one. Reduced risk-taking. If you don't feel confident, if you feel like you're an imposter or fraud, like you really haven't earned your place, are you going to invest in the business? Are you going to start the business? Are you going to make the phone calls? Are you going to make the pitch? Are you going to put yourself out there and take a chance on yourself? Or are you going to shrink back? Work-life balance. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier about not having boundaries around my workday. How many times have you overworked and been under present in the things that really truly matter to you if you ask yourself honestly? And lastly, and this one is huge, sisters, impacts on your mental health. I have struggled for years with clinical depression. And it started probably in my early years of being a stay-at-home mom. I stayed at home with my daughters for the first 10 years of their life. And I was involved in a very beautiful church with wonderful women that loved me very much. But I didn't fit the mold. I wasn't the quiet and gentle spirit. I wasn't the organized mama. I couldn't fit into all of the structures that these women so easily moved in. And I felt like such an imposter of a stay-at-home mom. You don't have to analyze imposter syndrome from the perspective of being a working mom or a businesswoman or an entrepreneur or a podcaster. As a stay-at-home mom, I felt so worried all the time that these other incredible women, people I looked at with admiration, people I wanted to emulate, they were going to find out that I really sucked at this. I couldn't even organize my laundry, let alone plan a meal or play dates or even fill out the permission slips for my daughters. I was overwhelmed. I was miserable when I should have been enjoying this beautiful blessing of raising my 4 daughters. Imposter syndrome can lead you to such a dark place. I stopped sleeping. And eventually, I was diagnosed with depression. I got on medications, and I was on those medications for over 10 years. And this isn't a get on medication, not get on medication conversation. This is to let you know you're not alone. If you feel like an imposter and you're stuck in this mental loop of feeling like you're never going to be enough, that they're all going to find out that you're going to be a failure at everything that means the most to you, you must tackle this syndrome before it destroys your mental health. Are you waking up in the middle of the night, agonizing about what you did or didn't do? Are you questioning your decisions? Is it hurting your relationships? We have to tackle imposter syndrome. We need what only you can give. This world is waiting for you, sisters. This world needs you to show up in your most authentic self, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not exactly how you want it to be. Because what the world really needs is to see real women doing real things with real confidence and real willingness to make mistakes and to learn from them. So what do we do? Where do we start? I don't have all of the answers, sister, but I can share with you what I am doing ongoing, because this is an ongoing process for me. I can share what works because I'm living it, and I want that freedom for you. So are you ready to bust through imposter syndrome? I'm sure there are lots of other tips out there, but I'm going to give you my 5 best tips to bust through imposter syndrome. And they work. I promise you. And I have to go back to them again and again. This is not a one and done. I'll do these things and then I'm good to go. Because imposter syndrome, it's a battle. But I know you're up for it. Are you ready? Let's go. Number 1. Stack your proofs, not your doubts. Stack your proofs, sister. I love this phrase. It's one of my favorite phrases. Stack your damn proofs. Every single day, if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, every single day, write down your successes, no matter how small. It's those 2-millimeter shifts that make all the difference. But what we do is we focus on the big things and we miss all the progress we're making as we go along. If you feel like an imposter, step aside and take a look at your life from the outside looking in, and then stack those proofs, not your doubts. We spend so much time stacking our doubts, thinking about, talking about, ruminating on what we didn't do or how we fell short. And we miss these beautiful successes over here that are screaming at us. You don't have to be a Big Ten athlete. You don't have to be a podcaster. You just have to be filled with grace for yourself. So what are your proofs? Did you make a healthy meal for your family today? Stack it, sister. Did you walk 10,000 steps? Stack it, sister. Did you keep your word? That's a big one for me. Stack it. When you sit down at night and you get ready to go to bed, review your day and then give yourself mad props. If you're struggling to remember what your successes are, ask somebody who loves you, because I would be willing to bet that there are people lining up to tell you about the times when you nailed it, because how you define nailing it is up to you. So stack your proofs. That is a beautiful place to start. And here's the thing about stacking your proofs. This is a mindset. I know we've talked on previous podcasts, probably a number of times, about the triad, about physiology first, moving your body, and then focus is number 2, and then language and meaning is number 3. What are you focusing on? Are you focusing on what you didn't do? Are you focusing on the ways you failed or missed the mark? Or are you focusing on what you learned and how you grew and the things you actually did well? Because we're so quick to point out our own flaws to ourselves that we miss the beautiful things about ourselves and the beautiful things that we've accomplished. So stack your proofs, not your doubts. Number 2, inquire about the BS you've been believing. I know I've taught about this before, but I'm going to do it again. Byron Katie's The Work is a very simple set of questions that you can employ as a habit and a ritual to inquire, to question what you're thinking. Because our thoughts, it's what we're thinking that leads to our beliefs, that creates these emotions that then hinders our actions. So we want to do this inquiry. And I'm going to break her 4 questions down to 3 because I think it makes a little more sense for people. And I've done this before, so it's a little bit of review. Number 1, is what you're believing about yourself really true? Can you be absolutely sure that what you're believing about yourself or about a situation is actually true? So let me use the big question, right? I'm an imposter, sisters. Can you be absolutely sure that you are an imposter? Do you have all the evidence in the world and it's beyond a reasonable doubt you're an imposter? The answer is no, 99% of the time. You go to the second question. How do you feel? What emotions happen inside you when you believe the BS that you are an imposter? You feel anxious. You feel depressed. You feel hopeless. You play small. And then you go to the third question, Who would you be? How would you feel if you just simply refused to believe that lie that you were an imposter? You would feel hopeful. You'd feel excited. You'd have energy. Don't you want to be that kind of person? So let me break it down a little bit differently. For instead of using the big overarching lie that we tell ourselves that we're an imposter, let me take it this way. If you believe that you are not worthy of the promotion at work and therefore you don't apply, can you be absolutely sure that you're not worthy of that promotion? Do you have all the evidence in the world to believe that you are not worthy of that promotion? The answer is no. Go to that second question. How do you feel? How does it affect your life when you believe that you are not worthy of that promotion? You feel foolish. You're embarrassed. You don't show up with confidence. You don't try new things. Again, you play small. But you just honestly admitted that you don't know that you know that you know that you're not worthy of that promotion. And so if you can't be 100% sure that you're not worthy of that promotion and it makes you feel like garbage, why would you want to continue to indulge in that belief? Go to the third question. How would you feel? What would you be like? How would you show up if you didn't believe that lie or that belief that you can't be sure is true? You would have confidence. You would take chances. You would apply for the promotion. You would learn from maybe applying and not getting the promotion. You would look at it with more curiosity. You'd put those ideas out there. You'd spark creativity. So the second way you break through imposter syndrome is you inquire about the beliefs that fuel the imposter syndrome and you engage with that belief. I like to call it dancing with the belief, right? You dance with the belief and you test about it and you test it and you ask yourself, how would I feel? How do I let this belief make me feel? And who would I be if I just simply said enough? I'm done indulging in this belief I cannot be sure is true. I want that life that's on the other side of refusing to believe what I can't prove. Number 3, and this is something I am so fired up about and so passionate about because women, frankly, we kind of suck at this. Celebrate your successes. That's right. Celebrate your successes. This is different than stacking your proofs because we can stack our proofs and write in our journal. And that's more of that's more internal work. Celebrating our successes is more of an external work, right? Celebrate your successes. Don't minimize them. When you hear a woman downplay her successes, downplay her achievements, we call it being self-deprecating. And it might be cute, might seem sweet, but it's devastating to the confidence of a woman. And frankly, it doesn't advance women in the marketplace or women in the boardrooms or women in the PTA or women athletes. Like, enough. Be done. Be done with it. It's garbage. We want to create new habits of celebration, not downplaying. We want to start sharing, not shrinking. Ooh, I'm getting fired up because here's the thing. For many, many years, when I was involved in this evangelical church, I can't tell you the number of times that I was like, I need to talk to you. You're awfully prideful. You're awfully arrogant. And maybe some of that was true. But if I was being honest, a lot of times I was just excited about something I accomplished. You're bragging. We have heard this bullshit as girls since we were itty bitty bitty. Where does imposter syndrome begin? In the freaking crib. It begins in the crib, begins in the preschool, it happens in kindergarten, and it happens all throughout our education system and on into whether you're a stay-at-home mom or whether you are in the marketplace. Women who celebrate their successes are often looked at as braggarts. They're boastful. They're arrogant. It's off-putting. Well, you know what? It's a new day. It's a new dawn, and I'm feeling good, sisters, because it is about damn time we celebrate our successes, not just our own, but those of our sisters. We need to be lifting one another up and cheering one another on. Enough, damn it, of tearing other women down when we're celebrating our successes. This is hugely important, and it's just going to make our world so much better for our daughters, granddaughters, and descendants. We want to see women succeed, right? At Girl Out of Order, we are all about building bridges among all women, and we can do that by celebrating our successes. Because if we celebrate our successes with the right heart and the right spirit, we are going to inspire one another to do great things. And that is just going to make all of womanhood better. So pick up the phone and call your sister and be like, girl, I got to tell you what I did today. I am so proud of myself. And your sisters are going to give you snaps and props. And then next time she feels like playing small, she's going to be thinking about you. And she's going to make that phone call to you. Number 4, this is huge. Redefine failure. This goes back to the triad like I talked about. We were talking about focus in the last ones. This one is about language and meaning. Redefine what failure means to you. Change your perspective on failure and mistakes. View failure as an opportunity to learn and grow rather than a reflection of your inadequacies. I heard Sarah Blakely. She is the creator of Spanx. Thank you, Jesus, for Spanx. Oh, thank you, Sarah. I don't know if you're a fan of Spanx or not, but it's come in clutch for me a couple times. Sarah Blakely was interviewed at Business Mastery by Tony Robbins, and she was sharing how she, when she was raised as a child, every single day, her father would ask her and her siblings, "What did you fail at today?" And it seems so counterintuitive, but it created within her this mindset of, if I didn't fail at something, it means I didn't take a risk. And so what she was drilled into her, the pattern and habit that she drilled into her, is that failures actually means she was succeeding because she was taking risks and putting herself out there. Do you really think that Michael Jordan was always a success? He was cut from his damn high school basketball team. Did he just be like, well, I'm a failure, I'm going to hang up my basketball shoes and forget about it? Of course not. Failure actually creates in us hunger. And I watched that today as South Carolina defeated my Iowa Hawkeyes in the national championship basketball tournament, because last year Iowa knocked them out in the semifinals. So they came back with a hunger and a fire because they redefined what failure meant for them. They said, failure is going to be my fire. Failure means we got to a point where maybe we fell a little short of our dreams, but what are we going to do with it? That's the question about failure. What are you going to do with failure? I remember I was a freshman in high school, and I was trying to, this is such a silly little example compared to the national championship, but it fueled me, and it still does today. I was coming down the home stretch. I was going to make it to state as a freshman in the mile. No one in my high school had ever done that before. And I was running as hard as I could, but I made a critical error. I looked over my right shoulder to see where third place was so I could make sure I was going to make it. And she passed me on the inside of the track, and she defeated me, and I did not go to state my freshman year. Took my mom a long time to get me out from under the bleachers because I was so hysterically crying because I felt like a failure. But I redefined what failure meant for me after that race. And I used that failure to fuel my fire, to be determined to never let it happen again. And I can tell you that my senior year in the state cross country meet, I had studied the rules so clearly. I had them memorized because I never wanted something like that to happen to me again. And it actually made the difference between winning and losing that race. So how do you define failure, sisters? Do you let failure become your definition and therefore tell yourself you're an imposter? Or do you let failure become the fuel that fires up your dreams? There is not an entrepreneur out there, not a business person out there that has not failed in some respect to get to where they are. Nobody has easy street. Nobody goes from $0 to $1 million in a business without making mistakes along the way. It's how we handle them, how we speak about them, that defines how they become part of our DNA. So, are you a failure, a fraud, or are you failing yourself into greatness? It's up to you how you define failure. Now, lastly, I'm going to wrap it up with this one, and it is my drumbeat, my drumbeat, my drumbeat. Create a tribe of empowering human beings. That's right. You cannot and should not do this alone. You create an empowering tribe of human beings who will not only remind you who you are when you forget, but they will remind you of what you are capable of when you feel wobbly and unsure. I've had my really close friend Zakiel on this podcast before. She's an incredible human being in every sense of the word. One of my favorite things about her is she reminds me who I am when I forget. Zakiel has reminded me what I'm capable of. When I want to shrink back, she doesn't let me. I'm now in a mastermind called the True Legacy Collective, filled with some of the most powerful women I've ever been in relationship with. And I have a fire under my ass like I haven't had in a really long time, because I am pulled along by their incredible mindset and their achievements and their belief in me. So how do we bust through imposter syndrome? Sisters, these are my 5 best tips. I'm sure there's many more out there, but let me just summarize. You stack your proofs, not your doubts. You inquire about the BS that you're actually believing, because your beliefs lead to your emotions and your emotions lead to your actions. You celebrate your successes. You don't minimize them. You redefine what failure actually means. And lastly, you create a tribe of empowering human beings that remind you who you are, and they remind you what you're capable of. Imposter syndrome does not have to plague you. It does not have to cause you to play small or shrink back or lose sleep. You are worthy of breaking through this lie and trusting your intuition and your knowing that you are made for absolute greatness, because the world needs what only you can provide. And you are not an imposter, a fraud, or a fake. You are absolutely designed the way you were supposed to be, and you are capable of greatness. We are in this together. I'm so proud to be on this journey with you, sisters. So keep it up and keep being a girl out of order.